Welcome to Your Speaking Matters, hosted by Rick Durling and Carol Durling. Each episode of this podcast unravels the secrets of effective communications through engaging conversations, techniques, and tips. The skills and techniques can help you transform your fear of public speaking into a skill that opens doors to new opportunities. In this episode, we will be discussing and providing tips about speech structure. Welcome, Rick Durling, Distinguished Toastmaster. Are you ready to talk about speech structure, Rick?
Absolutely, Carol. Let's make that our topic today.
All right. We're going to start right off the bat. What is speech structure?
That is a great question. And in all honesty, it is having an opening where you tell people what you're going to tell them, a body where you cover why you feel that way or whatever it is that you want to cover, and a close where you summarize everything. That is the basic structure of any good or excellent speech. There are many ways to structure a speech with an opening, body, and close.
What kinds of ways are there to structure a speech, Rick?
I'm going to mention at least 5, but there's quite a lot more. The 5 that I'm going to start with is topical speeches. In this particular case, you might have something you want to talk about. Let's just say you want to talk about how to cook a souffle. Your opening would introduce the idea of cooking a souffle. And now you would have the various things that go into making it. That would be topical. You could talk about some event during the day, something that you went to. Regardless, that's what I would call a topical type speech. Or you could have a cause and effect, where you say, while we were driving here today, we saw somebody spin out and nearly hit another car. That would be a great opening, and now you could go cover the fact that it was icy on a curve and the 2 cars did manage to miss one another as your body. That would be, in my opinion, a cause and effect speech. It's also a great place to do humor because, as we'll discuss at some future point, humor often has a cliffhanger and a twist to make it a funny story. So cause and effect speeches are really great. How about chronological? Let's say I want to talk about my life and say, okay, I went to school and I graduated in 1975 from high school, went on to college, and I got a great job. And probably my best job ever was in 1985. Now, in my body, I can start talking about various steps that led from the beginning date to the end date. That, to me, is a chronological speech. You're talking about your life. It could be the timeline of how the universe unfolded from a tiny little marble to exploding into the massive size that it is today. Another type would be spatial. Spatial would be a situation where maybe you talk about things top to bottom or bottom to top. And another one, problem solution. Spell out the problem in the opening, offer up solutions in the body, and in the close you could then talk about what you think the best solution for the problem that was introduced will be. So you will see there are many ways to take opening, body, and close and create an excellent speech.
I agree with you, Rick. Watching that car spin out this morning was definitely a cliffhanger. So, in fact, it might even be a hook. How would you describe the opening of a speech?
I think of speech structure often, particularly the opening, as an upside down funnel. And the reason I think of it as a funnel is because you put a bunch of stuff in and you come down to a point. So let's take an example of what I'm talking about. I could say today that we were on our way here and witnessed somebody spinning out. That might be my final point. It wouldn't be very interesting, I don't think. It wouldn't catch people's attention. In the opening, you really want to get people's attention. You want to give them a reason to listen to what you have to say. We call that the hook. And often, in my opinion, you put the hook at the bottom of the funnel before you start introducing the body of your speech. So let's take this example of the car spinning out. Instead of saying the car spun out, maybe I could say, we were almost clobbered by another car today. That might be a little bit more interesting and get people to go, what the heck happened? That is an example of a hook. You can actually do research and find lots of ways, but just think about turning it a little bit so it turns into something that will grab your audience's attention so that they want to listen to what you have to say in the body of your speech.
What are the key aspects of a well-developed speech body?
It's in the body that you make the key points about your speech. Now, I didn't do this with the opening, but it does apply in the opening as well. The various types of speeches that I talked about, topical speeches, generally in the body you want to have a couple of points, maybe 3, that spell out what or support the topic that you're talking about. Now I say 2, maybe 3, because if you put more than that in the body of a speech, you're often going to have difficulty keeping the audience's interest. So in this case, when you're working on your speech, less can be more. You can actually focus on maybe 3. Even if it's a 20, 30-minute speech, you might want to stick to 3 so that you can keep the audience interested. And another little hint is when you use 3, it's a lot easier for you as a speaker to remember 3, maybe 4 key points in the body of your speech. So if you want to be memorizing your speech, there's a small hint and tip that you can use. Now, cause and effect are similar speeches. Again, the body is going to be about various things that talk about the cause and effect. We had a major snowstorm last night, and it dumped 4 to 5 inches over the entire region, and as a net result, the roads were slick. And now I can go to my next point and say, driving here, we encountered the slick roads, and that's where cars spun out. So as you can see, the body can be constructed the same way. Chronological speeches are even easier because, let's face it, you can just say, hey, at this date and time I did this, or this happened, at this date and time this happened, etc. So the body of your speech can be, for a chronological speech, just what happened at various points along the timeline that you're talking about. That's great techniques for building the body of your speech.
I wasn't going to say anything, but that timeline, you have to be careful. You were dating yourself at the beginning.
Well, I think the gray hair may give it away a little bit.
Okay. What do you say to close a speech?
I think I should point out that my wife did marry an old guy. Anyways, so because now she can't respond back. The closing is your opportunity to take everything that you've presented and summarize it. If you remember at the beginning I said you can have a funnel. Well, now you can turn that funnel the other direction and make a summarization speech about what your key point was. And in the process, maybe list off some of the things in very short form that you covered in your body. So for instance, I might be able to say, yep, the car spun out in front of us, but fortunately, because everybody was driving safely, we were able to escape any damage whatsoever, and everybody rolled away from it with no issues. I've now closed that whole topic and brought it together in a summarization. That's the key in the closing, is to summarize. Don't repeat what you've already said. This is your opportunity to follow the classic structure of a speech. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. But don't repeat word for word what you did in the body, because in the closing, they've already heard it, but you're just reminding them what they heard, what gems you've actually given them in your speech.
How do you approach writing the speech?
Well, you could certainly just sit down and start writing top to bottom. But I submit that there's a step that you need to take, particularly as a Toastmaster. When you're pulling together a speech to give at the club, or for that matter, in any situation, I suggest that you start with, what is it you really want to say? What is the goal or the objective of your speech? If you start with that objective, now, classic format, you have begun with the end in mind. I want to make a speech about how wonderful winter is, because I love winter, by the way. So what I can do now with that as a basics, I can come up with some body elements. And I strongly recommend coming up with a body at this point, the things that you actually want to cover. So in my case, I want to talk about winter. I think the way that the trees and the ground look with snow covering them is absolutely gorgeous. That could be one of my main points in my speech. I could go on to say skiing is a wonderful sport, or I can talk about ice fishing. There's lots of different things I could talk about to support my objective of saying winter is a wonderful time of year. So you start with the objective, decide what your body is going to be, and now, quite honestly, the opening will almost write itself. All you've got to do is figure out how to make that point that gets everybody's attention. You could do something like, you may not realize it, but winter is an absolutely wonderful time of year. It's an easy way to approach it. The better part is now the closing will almost write itself, because you already know what you've told everybody. So if you start with the body, and then write the opening and then the close, or write the close first and then the opening, I think you'll find that it's a lot easier to write a speech.
And in that way, the opening and closing match. I mean, you're looping back to where you started from to close a speech. It's a nice reference point.
Well, that's a really good point, Carol, and I think I'll expand on that if I may. One of the things as a speaker we should strive to do is have a thread running through the entire speech that we can come back to, so that every time you give a point, you can come back to the fact that we're talking about, in my example here, winter. So it's a thread, and then you introduce that as your topic at the beginning, and at the end you come right back to that thread and make it clear that that's what we've been talking about. So having that continuity through your entire speech, that will make your speeches absolutely sing.
And I agree. Winter is a winter wonderland. It's beautiful, as long as Rick is driving. And we made it here fine. Do you have any additional key thoughts that you'd like to make about speech writing?
I got a number of things that I would talk about in that space. So just to begin with, that opening, that hook, that all-important step of getting people's attention. Strive to make that relatable. Your audience, whatever you know about them, may not react well to my example. They may not like snow in winter. So you need to make something that will help them relate to it. So for instance, almost anybody that's lived in a winter area might have had great experiences as kids building a snowman. So maybe you can start off your speech by saying, we're going to talk about the excitement of playing in the snow and building a snowman. That might be a way to relate to people. However, the people in the South who have never or very rarely seen snow aren't going to relate well to that. So knowing your audience and making your opening relatable is a real important thing. Now, one of the things I really feel is exciting about speaking is helping people experience an emotion from the story that you're telling. And the emotion in this case, I recommend always starting at a positive point. Be upbeat. Even if you're about to tell a horrible story, you can still maintain, maybe not giddiness, but certainly a more positive attitude. The outcome of this, while horrible, is a lesson I learned. Might be a way to approach that when you're thinking about it. And the reason I say that is because if you start out absolutely in the bottom, worst kind of situation with people, where are you going to take them? If you can stay somewhere neutral and then take them down into how horrible the situation was. Now you've got them on a roller coaster ride, and you can bring them back up to a more neutral position at the end of that speech. People will react well to that kind of a roller coaster. You can do it the other way. Start neutral, go way high, and then bring them back to an even keel again. All of those are really great, effective techniques. And if you think about when you've read books, there's always this lead up to the climax of the book, and then the aftermath. That's what I'm talking about. Opening with a cliffhanger, yeah, very powerful. Again, it can be a bad situation, but maybe the outcome wasn't as bad as the cliffhanger you put out. So having that cliffhanger, for instance, consider it was a dark and stormy night. If you are at all a classical reader, you probably are familiar with that as a cliffhanger because he left you hanging there. Or, as I stood in the spotlight, I couldn't remember the topic of my speech.
Uh-oh.
It's a cliffhanger. Or, how about, the journey ended the same as it started. All of these leave the audience wanting more from your speech. They want to hear what you have to say. Why were you in that situation, for instance? That's what I mean by a cliffhanger. So, those are some key thoughts about what you can do with your speeches.
I really appreciate you giving us a lot of hacks today to organize a speech, how to begin it, how to organize it, how to conclude it, getting a hook right off the bat to get people's attention. There are a lot of tips in here, and if you try them out, I encourage everybody to try them out. They work.
I will take that a step farther and suggest that a great place to experience and work with speech structure is Confident Communicators or any Toastmasters club, where we strive to practice these skills and develop them so that they become natural to us. It's a very supportive environment, and I will speak for Confident Communicators because I do think it's one of the best clubs going.
And there's a link with this video to our website so you can find out more about us. I would like to take a moment to thank On TV for hosting us today. They're a great facility here in Lake Orion. We really appreciate all this great equipment that makes us look good and sound good. We like using it every week. With that, I think we're done for today.